marketing should be the first thing that you do every day because
Mhm.
life is life and something is going to come up. So, what I try to do every day, the 10-5-1. So, I send out 10 connection requests on LinkedIn. I try to comment on 5 posts on LinkedIn and I make one post on LinkedIn every workday. What I would say is it took like multiple months of being consistent on it before I started to see any benefit from it. It takes time. You're probably not going to see immediate results. And then there's like those silent lurkers. And
Mhm.
those are awesome too, because they'll come out of nowhere and be like, oh, I've been seeing your content. Hey, let's do work together. I'm like, what? This is great.
Yeah.
I was raised homeschooled, and so I would say that my parents did a really good job at kind of introducing different creative outlets. So, for example, my mom pretty early on purchased a pottery kiln, and so we would spend like quite a bit of time building out, different things with clay, and then using glaze, and then she would bake them, and I don't know if baking is the right word, but basically we would do a lot with pottery or different sort of crafts. So as far as a creative outlet, that was pretty common growing up in our household. I wouldn't say that I recognize that um, as a potential uh, venture for myself growing up. I would have never considered myself a creative person, but I was, into music. I was a musician, and uh, yeah, was I guess in different creative spaces. I will say that pretty early on, my brother and I would like try little businesses. So the first one I remember is we'd buy bulk candy from like Sam's Club, and then we would sell it at our church on like Wednesday nights and Sunday mornings. We had like this little briefcase that we would bring around, and kids, when they get little money, they definitely want to spend it on candy. So that was the first little like business entrepreneur step that I remember.
Nice. I
Later in
love
high school, I started DJing for weddings. And so
that.
that also kind of introduced me to like, okay, I can start a business. I can make some money. This is great.
Mhm.
Um, and which I still think is an incredible side hustle. If anyone is into music, DJing weddings, you can make like 500 to 1,000 a night. It's great.
Yeah.
Um, and yeah, then I went to college for a brief stint. But at the time, I was dating a gal and I really wanted to marry her. And so I said, like, just thinking to myself, I was like, man, it's going to be difficult to marry her if I'm not making any money. Around the same time, my dad offered me a job at his business. And so I decided to drop out of college and join my dad's business as their kind of marketing generalist. So that's where I started like digging my hands into all the different type of marketing tactics. I read a lot of books around marketing. My sister, she owns a graphic design studio in Pittsburgh, and so she was super helpful on the kind of graphic design front.
Mhm.
And then we would bring in different, advisors, et cetera, for the business side and the marketing side. So I was able to kind of learn on different fronts. So I
Nice.
ended up working with him for about 5 years, uh, and then started building websites on the side because I managed his site. He had a couple different sites that I was managing, building. So I started building sites for friends. And then one night, it was like, I so distinctly remember this, Andy, but it was like 1 or 2 a.m. and I was building a site for a friend. I was like, man, this is just super fun. I wish I could do this full time. And that was like in July of 2020. And that thought just never left my head after that.
Mhm.
And so
Yeah.
a month or two goes by and I'm like, man, it's still like really persistent. So I talked to my wife a little bit about it. And then ended up, talking with my dad. He was great. And that's how I started my
Yeah.
full-time website design business.
Okay, dude, that's awesome. Yeah, I love that a lot. So you kind of had you kind of like took it on yourself to make that like the main priority. You kind of, I mean, they talk about like all the time, like you say yes to everything like in the beginning and then find the thing that kind of and through that, you find a thing that, lights you up and you want to prioritize more of what your whole day ends up looking like. So it's cool to see that kind of like come to fruition. Like you were able to recognize in the moment what you enjoyed doing and were able to make that the focus. A lot of times I've seen is like, I'm kind of in this season right now, is like you just say yes to everything, and then you just spend so much time doing. I mean, I can only imagine like you're one of the only person that's managing a marketing team. Like you end up doing just everything, like email, design, social media, websites, outreach, all this, automation, all this stuff. And it's, you kind of have to like stop and think, okay, what about today? What was it about this week that I actually enjoyed? And like, how did that make me feel? Was it, meeting with these people, maybe getting to portray their ideas in a new creative way? And what were the tools and specific parts of it and why does that fit my personality? And like, I've been guilty of just like becoming a taskmaster, in some sense. And, yeah, and I think I see a lot of like similarities, to be honest. I did my first internship I was in college. So I worked for this company called P4S Golf in North Carolina. I was in golf fitness. Long story there, but I wanted to find a company that was in golf and fitness because I was a personal trainer and I played golf in college. So I went down and entered with this company, and I became just like best friends with the marketing director. And he was the solo marketing director for the 60-person company that was doing everything, like email, website, social media, YouTube, editing. And he was like, intern, like, I need help. Just so I ended up making that like I initially went down there over winter break, stayed down there over Christmas, and just intern, worked like 10 hours a day, and then learned everything from him. And I was like, this is pretty cool. And so I like the analogy of like having to get exposed to all parts of the marketing environment and kind of seeing the role that you can bring your own creativity into that. So yeah, what was it about the website stuff that you think kind of lit you up a little bit and made you want to make that the forefront?
Yeah, I think it's really good, Andy. I think it's really easy to like one of the like superpowers, I think, of having experience in a more like generalized or broad environment is that when you end up working with something more specific in that space, it's really easy, especially when you're working with other business owners, to be like, hey, like I get it. Like you need to do what's best for your business in the entirety, and kind of having those eyes of this singular, design project is not the most important thing in this person's world right now. And so I think it's really beneficial being able to approach things with that more broad mindset. But yeah, I think I guess I was drawn to the idea of creating something, like getting into the web space where someone could say, man, I need a website. And then I could go work on it a little bit. I was like, ta-da, there's a website. Like that was really fun. And then they would, ask for a specific page or, hey, can we do this with it? And then I was like, oh, maybe, let's try. And so digging in and figuring out what was possible. I started in WordPress, and then, later on I found Webflow just kind of by happenstance. I was talking to another designer and they're like, oh, I've heard good things about Webflow. I was like, Webflow, what's that? And so dug into Webflow, trying to learn how to do that. And I was like, oh man, this allows you to do so much more. So yeah, I guess I would just say I appreciated the idea of creating something. And hey, this is a need. I can help fulfill that need. And that just is pretty fulfilling.
Yeah, it is. And it's kind of a chosen struggle almost, because the web development is hard. Like it's not like, it's gonna sound bad, but it's like it's not graphic design. Like graphic design is hard too, but there's so much more technicality to it, and you have to like almost become a student of it, in a way that you don't have to apply yourself like just to something that's more as there's more deliberate practice involved with design and development, especially in Webflow. Except there were like the class naming systems, and then optimize for SEO, keep all these things in the background too, and also like the first part of it. And what I love about it is like how it integrates like the right left brain. So in the beginning, you have to really set yourself up for knowing what the end result is, and designing with that in mind. So like setting up the sitemap, the copy, how does this all work together to create the piece that eventually is design, and how all of those elements kind of work together. What was it about Webflow that spoke to you too? Because I had a similar experience. I built 2 blog sites in WordPress in college with Elementor, and then a lot of time ended up going by before I got back into development. But then I used Webflow, and I was like, this is a totally different experience, and it kind of lit up that creative side a lot more. So what was that experience like, making that transition for you?
I would attribute the university, like the Webflow University, as to why I dug into Webflow. Because
McGuire.
I don't know, with McGuire, I don't know without that if I would have gone into it. I remember watching a couple videos. There was like 2 or 3 folks on YouTube that I would like watch their tutorials, like Timothy Ricks, Peyton Clark, Smith,
and
there was this gal. She works for ConvertKit. I cannot remember her name though. She had some.
Yeah, I know you're talking about.
She's like one of their lead designers or something like that. I forget her name. I can see her face, but I can't remember her name. Anyways, they had great videos too. But Webflow University, just like, it was great. So I really I remember. I don't know, at the time my wife was working night shift at the hospital, so I would just stay up super late watching their university Webflow tutorials. So yeah, and then once I started to experience, there's just so much possible with Webflow, especially for a guy that isn't approaching this with like a coding background or a programming background. It was super empowering. So be able to just pretty much immediately start building something. I pretty quickly went to my other past folks who had hired me or that I built their sites, my friends and family and such. I was like, hey, gotta rebuild this in Flow. So yeah, it was great. It was a great experience.
Yeah, it's like, that was a transformational moment too, is going through that course. And I think it is for like so many people. Like I've had other developers on the show, and they're like, yeah, Webflow University, that is like, it's like watching your favorite TV show for the first time. I think like when I watched Friends in high school, I'm like, that holds like a similar place in my mind. I can remember like specific jokes that McGuire made, and like how I would react, and just his like sarcasm and everything. The best thing ever, because I did that at the same time too. Was like I was building my portfolio site, and like that was just a blast. Like I graduated spring of last year, and I wanted to rebuild my portfolio site because it was just an Adobe portfolio. And I was like, okay, I'm going to rebuild it on Webflow. I had 2 weeks before I started the agency job. And I was like, I'm just going to learn how to do this. And it was 8 to 10 hours a day, just that, and learning, and also doing Figma at the same time, and trying to learn some code stuff too. And at the time I was like, man, I was like stressing about it, and that's probably like something that we all kind of have to get over sometimes, especially me, is like when I sit down to work, I'm like, okay, I have to really lock in and get the most out of this session, because time is finite, and I end up like stressing myself out a lot. But in that time, like I look back on that now, and I'm like, man, like those were the good old days. Like, but that was it. Finding ways to like implement those emotions and those feelings into like what I do now is something I'm always, looking for. So it's good to see that others kind of have that same experience. But
yeah, and it's like, it's fun, learning more and finding new ways to approach things. I find that even like I saw a video pop up the other day, and I was kind of scrolling through it, and the developer laid out like a really nice idea for Webflow. And I was like, oh, this is great. I'm definitely going to implement this from now on. And I remember, starting out, I didn't even have the concept of, oh, you can, and I'm not even saying this is the only way to do it, but I didn't even have the concept of, oh, you can design things out and plan things out in Figma or Adobe, and then you can develop it out in Webflow. And so that was just such a massive unlock for me whenever I discovered that was a thing that people did. It's like, oh, I'm going to try to do that. That's great.
Yeah.
And then, shortly thereafter, discovering this idea of, oh, you should have copy in place before you actually approach design, because then your copy is kind of supporting your design and not the other way around. So that means you have a really good, strong, copy base. So just like learning those things, like, man, I had no idea, but kind of digging in, seeing what other folks are doing. It's good stuff.
Yeah, that's funny. I think there's so much value in just, like, whether it's on LinkedIn or on YouTube or anything, just kind of seeing what other people are doing. And because it changes so much too. Like, I know it's kind of a trend to make like 2024 web design trends videos and stuff like that, which, I mean, I think there's some value to that, but just like watching live streams of, like, I don't know if you've seen any like the Reloom live streams or the Reloom, I think they're called like design battles, but they go like head to head and they build, a wireframe thing by using the components and stuff. But just like seeing other people work, like I've watched like Flux Academy's course, just like watching Rand just like on maybe 1.5 speed, but just watching his like workflow, like how he goes between tabs, how he maybe uses his AI images and how he transmits those, compresses them, puts them in, how he organizes the style guide. Just like there's so much value in just like seeing that, or like it's like sitting over the shoulder like professional. And that's something that I could do, all day. But there's so much value in that too, because especially like, and you can relate to this, is being freelance and working on your own. It's like there's a price you pay in terms of like naturally exposed education. So you kind of have to inject into your day somehow, or else like habit takes over. You kind of like keep doing your same processes, your same SOPs. And without keeping tabs on what other people were doing, it's hard to stay innovating and stuff.
I think one of the tricks for that too, Andy, is start like accepting projects that maybe you don't totally know how to fulfill. It's like it's this like forced learning, and it's way more fun to learn something when you're getting paid for it too. And I don't mean that in like a malicious way. I think there are, maybe there's like one aspect of the project you're like, oh, I'm not entirely sure how to do that. Dude, that's like most folks. Like most folks don't always know how to do every single thing of a project. And so, being able to dive in and kind of create that forced learning habit. I think that's something good to kind of step into that uncomfort or discomfort rather. Right. I think that's really where growth occurs.
Yeah, that's a great point. That's where the growth happens, is point of discomfort. But tell me about you. I've waffled on a little bit, but tell me about like Rocship and like how that name came about. And because I love your branding, I kind of love your creative kind of like doodly style. You have a very consistent like brand voice. It's kind of sarcastic. It's kind of edgy, and I really admired that about you and kind of how you built your branding around that. So can you talk about like what that development process was like, and how the history of branding yourself under Rocship or Rocship? It's
Rocship. Yeah.
Okay, good. I got that.
Yeah, man. I think I think one of the problems that a lot of businesses run into these days is trying to come across like really corporate-y. And I don't exactly know what drives that. I think it's a desire to be professional, and in a way, it's like that's really good. Like in a business context, when you're working with folks trying to accomplish your goal, like you do need to be professional. But in the marketing and sales point of view, people want to talk to a human, and they want to have that, like, that connection with someone. And so I think that a place that solopreneurs, freelancers, creatives can, like, a place that they can really step into the market and connect with folks that bigger businesses might have a trouble connecting with, is through their personality, is through their kind of that humanist side of them. And so I really encourage folks to not try to come across as like some massive agency that's, servicing like the big four companies. Just like, it's like, hey, no, people appreciate having the email to your inbox, and they appreciate being able to hop on a call with the person who's doing the work. And so that's just a side note on all of this. But Rockship. So I started trying to think of names. I thought it would be kind of cool if it had, some tie into my last name. So I had like 12 or some names that were possibilities. And I was, hopping on domain registrars to see, okay, what is available. And I was just kind of in that state for a couple of weeks. And one day I was driving home and I was like, this is so silly. Like, why am I putting a pause on my whole business just to come up with this name, for something that hasn't even made any money yet? Realistically, like I need to create this thing. And so my kind of thought with choosing Rockship was, hey, if I do good work, no one will really care what my name is. And I can always rebrand in the future. And Rockship kind of sounds like rocket. And it also kind of ties into this idea of like shipping things. And I kind of like that. Yeah. So I just went with Rockship. Initially, I had the rockship.co domain. Some private domain buyer had purchased rockship.com. We went back and forth for multiple months. And I just kept saying no to their offers. And then eventually, I think I purchased it for about $300. So, yeah.
Nice. I'm bored. Nice. Yeah. I mean, I always kind of asked about like the origins of the name. And especially when it comes to like freelancers turned like business solopreneurs, business owners, there's always some element of like, man, I was just such an idiot. Not that that's what yours was, but
that's good.
Yeah, like it's so consistent, and I was the same way where I was like, okay, and you always kind of, it's natural human nature to like find any excuse to delay every step of the process. Like when I think about like starting a podcast, I was like, okay, I have to watch all these videos on mics and software and plugins and streaming and cords and cameras. Like when in actuality, I could have just opened the voice memos on my phone and talked into it, which is what actually makes the difference. So yeah, it's stuff like that too, and it's the people that can, and are empowered by that can kind of just dive in, get started, and not be held back by the minute details, the name or something like that. Like mine was MMG was like the name of my like studio agency, and that started out because I used to do sports graphics in college for like athletes or my friends. And the name of my Instagram page was Mindful Milligan Graphics. I was big into like fitness and running and meditation and stuff. And so I made that my LLC name, and of course it was available. And then at my first Chamber of Commerce event, like almost a year ago, the first Chamber of Commerce event, the guy read it wrong. And I just realized like every time I'm saying it, I'm having to repeat myself and it's way too long. And so it's like, okay, MMG Design, and just forget about it, not turning back now. I love it. Yeah, it's there's always some kind of story behind it. So I always like asking that. But
I think like it's totally fine to have messy beginning. Like I mean, even every day is like still messy, and it's easy, especially with social media, to get caught up and say, man, like I need to be like Raylan, or I need to be like Vinsweet, or these massive, really successful businesses. But even them, like look at them 5 years ago or whatever, and it was in the same spot. And so a lot of times I don't think I give myself enough grace just to be like, hey, just need to do the next right thing today, and let's just keep doing that. You know, even looking at my own business, going back and forth into different markets, and even what I was doing for a while, I was approaching like becoming a full service marketing agency and trying to figure out how, what that would look like. For a while, I pivoted to a completely different niche that I'm not doing right now. And so like that looks a whole lot like a zigzag. But then, I can create like this nice little story that says, and here I am today, WX, like this is great. But it's not exactly how I want.
Exactly. Yeah. That's that's been the most value of having like discussions or interviews like this, is like, you can always like see the dots looking backwards. Like I listen to you tell your story. It's like, oh yeah, it's so natural, like A to B, work background and networking, we found you like websites, and then now it's just all this super linear path. And I mean, when you even look back at it for yourself, you can kind of logically see that. But when you're broadcasting in the future, you're just like, I have no clue what the hell I'm doing. This is going nowhere. These dots do not connect at all. So it's kind of, having that, knowing that perspective and knowing that you can't see what's next, but also just kind of having the faith, that it's there's someone else that's out there directing your path, and that you can kind of way influence so much. But
yeah, this was a good quote. I love that. It's from an author. He's recounting a story. He's interviewing this older gentleman, is in his 80s or 90s, and the guy basically says, if you had asked me like when I was in my 20s, when I was in my 30s, when I was in my 40s, like I would have told you that I was jumping through so many hoops, that my life was a dumpster fire, that I had no direction. But now, as I, am 85 years old, looking back on my life, I see that I was being guided straight as an arrow. And I just think, that's so good. And it's really hard to remember that when you're in the messy middle, like when you're out in the stuff. And so, whenever I have enough mindfulness to remember that and to say, hey, there's someone greater than me out there that's taking care of me. Like it's a really good spot to be in, but it's hard to stay in that mindset every day. So love it.
Yes. So right on. Yeah. Yeah. It is. And then especially like, what was your experience kind of transitioning from a job or an occupation where you worked more with a team to kind of more solo, and you're like, oh man, like I'm steering the ship here? Because I know there's a lot of freedom in that, but there's also a lot of, it's like, okay, it's just me. And there's like, I had a lot of anxiety about like, you have to be someone that shows up for yourself every day. And if you're someone too that is like, I would view you as a high performer, then you can kind of get into negative self-talk, which I do a lot as well. Because I mean, it's audience of one, we're all our own worst critic. So what have been like your biggest experiences with like solopreneurship, and do you think it fits your lifestyle, and what do you like, or maybe some of the things you're struggling with about it too?
Yeah. So I think that there was a lot of excitement around going solo. I remember like, showing up at a coffee shop soon after I started, and was like, oh, this is great. On my own, building websites. This is the bomb. But like some of that starts to become like, just like a new everyday, right? And then it's not so great anymore. I guess that's the way life goes. I would say that the issues started popping up around having good time management. What is your priority? Like, what are my priorities today? Project management, like being on top of everything. So you have to worry about project management, you have to worry about actually doing the work, and then you have to worry about getting new projects. And so balancing all of that, it can be really easy for me to only work on one or two of those and say, no, I'm doing good. Like I'm having a productive day, and I've got to do these things. But if I let one of those legs fall, then my business crumbles. Instead of being able to sustain a good time management, good product management, like those things are difficult to do. That's something that really helped me, was getting plugged in to a couple awesome communities where I was surrounded by folks who were ahead of me, were like rock stars, that I could look to and be like, oh, I want to be more like them. Like, this is great.
Yeah.
Continuing to like further my education, taking courses, reading, that type of thing, to where I could start to experience, okay, if this is where I am right now, what does a desired future look like that's better than this? Because right now I'm stressed. I don't know how I'm going to get another project, and I don't know how I'm going to finish my current project. Like, this isn't a great place to be in. So there's got to be a better path than this. And so I love what Alex Ramosi says about like I think he says the way he approaches it anyways is like, if you're sad or feeling depressed, sometimes it's because you don't know what the next step is. And so trying to dig in, it's like, hey, what is the next right step for me to take? But then the day ends and then it starts again, and you have to approach the day with that same mindset. And that's difficult for me. I find that my kind of like excitement or energy for approaching my business is definitely in waves. And that's where I want to go back to sources of energy, good community, that type of thing, where I can say, oh yeah, no, this is a good thing that I'm doing. And there's a benefit here. So yeah.
Yeah. Dude, Mia and I are just like, yeah. So, so much of it too, like what you said. So I like time management, first of all, like I found like the times of day, like I work the best and where I am in certain places, like mentally. So, and I know I can feel it when I start getting like off track. So like I've been in some like a bit of a routine lately where I get like really into work. I just onboarded my first like intern through this tech internship program. So I'm showing up for him and we're kind of learning together. He is a genius. Like he's like super into like custom coding, Java, and some of the stuff he can do is incredible. And we have a call every morning, and it gets me like 7:30 in the morning, ready, accountable, ready. We meet, and I can give him some tasks for the day. And just it's almost like I'm sharing it with someone too. So there's kind of that part of it. But yeah, like I get into this cycle sometimes too, where I burn the candle. Like I'll get really into what I'm doing, whether it's a development project or it's LinkedIn or making some kind of content, and I'll just keep going. And it's just I pay for it the next day, and it's then when you kind of run it too far and you take advantage of where you're feeling, it's almost like you kind of have to hold off and remind yourself that it'll be here tomorrow. And you're right too, like the coffee shop thing. Like I was like the exact same experience of like, man, like I'm having a nitro cold brew right now, and I'm in a Starbucks and I'm working, I'm making money. But then just there's kind of like this, what I can describe as like this maybe like low level anxiety at like all times. Like you don't know where the next project is coming from in the moment. You don't know, and I think it's kind of a balance here too, because even if you're getting a paycheck, it's like how secure actually is that. But there's also the good side of it too, where there's like I get up in the morning, I'm fired up, like I have to eat, so I have to go and make this stuff happen. And that kind of dovetails into another question I want to ask you too, is like how do you, and it's kind of there's so many different approaches to it, especially when it comes to solopreneurs and freelancers and stuff. But what is your general approach, if you could like succinctly put it down, to marketing yourself? Do you approach that, because there's so many different ways that work for different people, and I personally have found it to be like, if I can make it something that's enjoyable and something that I'm going to lean into and enjoy doing, it's so much more sustainable. It's kind of like the Ali Abdaal sort of like feel good productivity. Like what would this look like if it were fun? So for me, that's like the podcast, that's inviting people on and learning from business owners. It's writing blog posts, doing guest articles. It's a LinkedIn. It's a little bit of video. It's kind of the more organic, less salesy tactics, I would like to think. So how do you kind of approach that, and what avenues do you use to make it less salesy and more personal to you?
Yeah. I would say for like the first year or two, I did not really have any sort of marketing plan, marketing steps that I would take on a consistent basis. A lot of it would be, oh, that person owns a business, right? Let me reach out to them and see if they want a website, or someone referred to me. Someone would refer me to someone else they know, and that continues to be a solid source of leads for me, as far as referrals, word of mouth, that type of thing. As far as what I do on a consistent basis to, work towards getting leads, something that really helped me, a good friend of mine now, he's also my freelance coach, Austin L. Church on LinkedIn. He has something called the morning marketing habit. And I think it's like a little course that he has. It's like $100 or something like that. That thing, that was awesome. That like totally transformed my marketing world for me. Basically something that he says is marketing should be the first thing that you do every day, because life is life and something is going to come up. And when you plan to do it later in the evening, you're probably not going to end up doing it because that project is going to be due, or that customer is going to email you and say, hey, can you take care of this for me? So what I try to do every day is something called like the 10-5-1. So I send out 10 connection requests on LinkedIn. These are from a list of folks that basically my assistant does research on LinkedIn, looks for folks that are kind of in our niche. And then I click through them and just make sure like, okay, yeah, this is someone that I could see doing business with. So I send 10 connection requests. I try to comment on 5 posts on LinkedIn, and I make 1 post on LinkedIn every workday. That's like my general little marketing task that I try to do every day. That's current, like, yes, this is what I do. I'm starting to see benefit from that. What I would say is it took like multiple months of being consistent on it before I started to see any benefit from it.
Yeah.
A couple things with LinkedIn is it takes time. You're probably not going to see immediate results. At least that's been my experience. And then there's like those silent lurkers. And those are awesome too, because they'll come out of nowhere and be like, oh, I've been seeing your content. Hey, let's do work together. I'm like, what? This is great. And then also something I've seen about LinkedIn is it's kind of like it can kind of be like a catalyst to relationships that you already have. So like I met a gal at a conference, but then she kept seeing my content on LinkedIn after we made that connection. And so I was like, okay, if I hadn't been posting on LinkedIn and if I hadn't been commenting or liking our stuff, like would she have actually reached out to me and wanted to work with me? I don't know. Probably not. So that's one thing. And then one like little step that I would say that I want to implement, have not implemented yet, is handwritten letters. Like I think, especially in like the digital world, man, I think that's like a little bit of a unlock. Again, I have not implemented it fully, but I just like this idea of doing handwritten letters, especially to past clients. Like if you sent a letter or two to past clients every year, like how much more likely would they be to refer you? And that just creates this amazing referral engine, I think. But anyways, I'm gonna try to get back to me in a few months. I'll let you know how it's going.
Yeah, absolutely. No, dude, I love that approach too. And I subscribed, it was like right after the layout I started going, when I went full time, was subscribed to Austin Church's Freelance Cake newsletter. And that whole like automation sequence, like brilliant. And I love that. And I do the exact same thing. And it varies as well too, but ever since almost 5 months now, February 1st, and I was going to bring that up too, because that in your newsletter, that was the first day that you went full-time freelance too. But for me, it was February 1st of this year when I got laid off. The first thing I did was I posted every weekday since then, and I was at 180 followers when I started doing that, and I just hit 1,000 yesterday.
Dude, yes,
yeah. But I'm still working on kind of like the nuance of it, like like how do you the conversion part of it? So, and it's like it's a whole funnel system where I've built great word of mouth. Like all my content is how do I help people? How do I inform? Um, and I think you've done very well too. Is something I'd love to touch base on. Is like you have your niche. You know, you have it very clear. It's coaches, consultants, and solopreneurs. If I'm not mistaken. I can even remember that. You know, I didn't even stalk you that hard. But it's what is it about that niche that you find kind of clicks for you? Because I know we are solopreneurs, so we're kind of making content to help like our past selves, and we can come up with ideas to serve. And that's something I'm always doing too. Is I'm looking for new like free resources, lead magnets. Like something I did was I made a and it's included in every podcast, but it's the like a Notion database for business reading books for entrepreneurs and business owners. And it's so natural too because I read all the time. So I'll just go into the database, add it, and then I'll mention on the podcast. It's like, okay, this week's entry is Millionaire Fast Lane, DJ DeMarco. It'll be like a quick summary, 2 or 3 main points, and then a link to go download it. And then you can filter it by difficulty and category and stuff. And then that's like something that I would use like as a business owner because it helps me create my reading habit, and it's a much more rewarding stuff. So like stuff like that. How did you kind of land on that niche, and why is it something that you associate with so hard?
Yeah. So there were a couple books that really pushed me towards choosing a niche. Sorry, I always say niche, but so I think Alex Hormozi talks a lot about niche. I think that David C. Baker in The Business of Expertise talks a lot about niche. I think Blair Enns in Win Without Pitching talks about niche. And Austin Churchill also talks about choosing a niche. So all these people were screaming at me, as I read their books, choose a niche.
Yeah.
But starting out, it's really difficult because choosing a niche, at least to me, seems like saying no to projects. And I'm not going to say that if you're a year or two in that you should immediately start a niche, because I didn't do that. Honestly, I was too scared to do that. And it's also really difficult to find something that, like you said, that you connect with, that you're like, yeah, I could go all in on this. Initially, because my background, when I worked for my dad, he was in home services. So I was like, oh, maybe I should do something around the home services niche. But something I've kind of discovered with a lot of home service businesses like plumbers, HVAC companies, that type of thing, is that it's a business so ran on word of mouth that they don't feel the need for marketing very much in their end websites. And so I was like, oh, that's a pretty big uphill battle to fight against. So why choose a niche where I have to fight against that? Through my first couple of years working, I ended up working with a company called Path for Growth, which is a kind of high-level business leadership and personal growth coaching company. And I worked with Austin. Fun fact, both of those I did work for free and or barter. So I was like, hey, you probably wanted it pay me to build your website, but we do a barter with me, or I'll do this portion for free. Because I knew that I needed to have stuff in my portfolio that was set up good. So for me, it was worth doing that. And so I looked back, 2 years in saying, okay, I really should pick a niche. And those two companies came to mind. And I was like, man, I really enjoyed working with them. I did not make much money from either of those projects, but I really enjoyed working with them. And I also noticed that a lot of coaches, consultants, solopreneurs, are on LinkedIn. They generally have a problem with marketing. They need more leads. They appreciate good websites. A lot of times they're trying to educate folks. And so their website needs to be updated on a consistent basis. So those are the things I was thinking about. Hey, I've worked with folks in the past that are in this category that I enjoy. They seem to have a need, and I can find them easily on LinkedIn. So once those boxes were checked off, I was like, okay, this is a good niche, right? I felt kind of funny, talking to Austin about it and being like, hey, I'm going to choose a niche that you are in. It was great. And so started building my marketing around that, started creating all my content around that. And it really has been an unlock, man. And I'll say, like, right now, I'm working actively on 4 projects that are not in my niche. So this idea that people were just going to stop reaching out to me because I would be niche down, like, has not been the case. Like, I'm kind of shocked. Like right now I'm working with a SaaS company, a landscape company, a home service business, and I can't remember the last one. It was like a commercial real estate investor or something like that. Anyways, it's just interesting that even though I've niched down pretty dramatically, I think all my content is around my niche. My website's totally on my niche. Like I'm still getting projects outside of my niche. So
yeah, that's interesting. Dude, I love that. That's what Hormozy says too, is like you start niche and then you can branch out from there and go more mainstream. Because he started, very niche with like, I think it was gyms and fitness and selling weight loss, stuff like that. And then the unlock was when you can gain that authority, gain, the stack of proof that you are who you say you are, and then you can, start talking about business as a whole. Because the principles do apply, and if people want to work with you, even if they see like the content you're making isn't exactly what they want to work with you. So it's like, maybe can you do this for me too? So yeah, I think you picked a great niche, and I'm always kind of oriented because there's so many different ways you can kind of niche down. And it's yeah, I mean, it is tough, but I think you've done a great job of it. And so that's, I'm always looking for feedback on kind of like what that process was like. And I think like I started a business where I kind of kept it separate, like on the back burner, like it did all the things they tell you to do, is like, okay, put in your email footer, bring it up in conversations, bring it up in networking events, but don't like push it too hard, and just do free work and get feedback for it and do case studies. But it's, for right now, it's very specialized on like golf professionals. So I grew up I went to a PGM golf program, which is professional golf management. So super niche. And you do these internships like as you graduate college, and you work at prestigious golf courses with the head pros, and you kind of see what their life is like. But basically it's a full service marketing agency for golf head pros that want to make money online and create a brand rather than having to book like hourly lessons. So it's checked all the boxes of, and I've done 2 case studies now with, some of my past college friends who went on to be golf pros, and they're seeing like, they're usually working at a facility that they don't own. So you need to create a personal brand. Like they can't control like how much they charge. And with the right social media and giving lessons online, like it's and golf too as an industry is very behind the times and creating content, marketing themselves. So it checked all the boxes, and it's kind of my long-term play there too. But it's almost like too niche too. So it's like you have to be like a 20 to 35-year-old head pro, ambitious, overworked, working in a place where you want to start making money online. And then so the unlock is there, but it is it also builds on the skill set that I'm currently doing with freelance too. So I kind of have that. I had my 2 little split parts of it there. But I love that niche too. But I love your niche because it's like I like the idea of like working one-on-one too. So people are really invested in their project too. And it's not like you're working with a company where they might have like a marketing team and you're taking feedback from multiple sources, and you're not on a Zoom call with 10 to 15 other project managers, and you're like, oh, okay. So yeah, I like that a lot. And I think people that are solopreneurs understand business. They understand like, okay, I'm investing in myself here. This is what I want to portray here. And they understand where you're coming from as a business, a solo business owner too. So I love your content, how you market it around that and center around that. And it's all very clear. It's all very, on the straight and narrow from my perspective. I like what you're doing to your content.
Thanks, Sandy. No, I appreciate that, man. And yeah, I would just say like, well, like I said before, like choosing a niche is pretty difficult, and it takes like, I don't know, Good. Like I would not always recommend niching down when you're getting started. At least that wasn't my path. So how could I recommend that? So
Yeah. It's a vulnerable place too, because it does feel like you're shutting out work in the beginning at least. But
and just like the other day, I got a comment on one of my posts that was like, "Oh, I didn't know you did work outside of your niche. I would have had a website for you." And so it's like, oh, darn. You know what I mean? So,
yeah,
the reality is there.
right. Yeah, no, that's cool to hear that. What is your I want to talk about kind of your services, and like how you kind of package yours, because I want to talk about too, like your website. You have the don't hire me section on your page. I think that's really cool. Kind of speaks into that brand voice we're talking about with the edginess there. But yeah, tell me kind of like how you landed on your exact services, and it's probably, as I imagine, it's probably from trial and error, as most of these things are. But how you kind of went about making your packages and the deliverables for each of them, and kind of like how you landed on where you are, regardless of like what the exact things are. Just how did you what was the iterative process of getting to where you are now?
Yeah. Man, I've changed my website packages so much, Andy, and I feel like just now I'm to a point where I feel really confident and happy with my website packages. So I wanted my website packages to be such that people could just easily understand them. And I think the benefit was as much for them as it was for me, because it's so much more easy to sell something when you feel really confident about it. And so I basically just posed the problem. I was like, okay, what projects do I like to do? What kind of price ranges would I like to be in? And what would be the value points for those price ranges? Like, how can I distinguish those two? Like, that was a really big issue I had at the beginning, was trying to see, like, how can I distinguish the value between these two? What if someone wants my smaller package, but then they want to increase the number of pages, or they want to start like adding things on that starts to look a little bit more like my bigger package? Those are like difficult problems, but it's like, okay, either I can try to solve this problem, or I can continue living in like confusion for myself and my clients. So I decided to, basically land on two packages called Starter Pro and the Pro Plus. Starter Pro is distinguished through, it's only 3 pages. You fill out a prep form instead of me interviewing you, and some of the design revisions are more limited. For the Pro Plus, it's pretty much your full website package. We do an interview process, we do a wireframe process, we do multiple design iteration process. So there's just a lot more kind of like value packed in, and it's up to like 12 pages or something like that.
Okay.
That has been so huge for me, Andy, and I would like highly recommend folks, if they can, get their pricing into package formats. And I know it's like, it could be scary, because it's like, well, what if I want to sell like a $20,000 website, or like, what if they end up wanting an additional design revision? I'm like, man, the issue of that potentially coming up, like the value of having clear prices and the amount of sales you will get from that, I think it vastly outweighs the potential issue you may be having to spend a couple more hours on a project that has defined pricing. Like, that has just not been an issue in my experience. My experience, Andy, is folks show up for sales calls, I go over my pricing, and then within an hour I get a notification the payment has gone through. And it's just like, it's wild, because people say like, oh, that's the pricing. Okay, great. It's not like this back and forth. I want to send you a proposal for 8 pages. Oh, what if we get rid of this one page and combine them? Could we get it down to 6 pages? And then could you drop your pricing by a couple grand? Like, no, this is the pricing for the website. And then I have freedom then to work within that. So that's been just like a huge unlock for me.
Yeah.
really difficult problem to solve. At least it was for me, trying to see like, how can I create value in these two products clearly. So yeah, it was definitely a process, but totally worth it.
Yeah, I love that, man. And they talk about like productized service, stuff like that a lot. And I think there's value to that. But I think the biggest unlock that you kind of talked about is the simplicity of it. It's a lot easier to, especially when you know them, like, hands down, what's deliverable, all of them, and you kind of get into this routine where you're on the call, you can just elaborate two options very clearly, and it's not like, and you don't have to say the pricing's on the website, but you can just be like, this is what's in this package, this is what's in that package. They clearly identify that, and then they can put themselves in their own bucket based on what they need. And it's also a lot less salesy. So you're not trying to say like, oh, we could probably save you a little bit, and then go to this compromise, and then you find yourself having to quantify that compromise via a price that you can't name because you don't want to talk about pricing. Like, yeah. I you can tell like this is stuff like this is the value of conversation with this brain that I've been there, I am there. So it's I like the idea of productizing too, and I think it works well with when you have a predefined niche. You can kind of see what other people, what their investment level is for a similar project, and like a lot of these people that come to you too are probably networked, so they know like, okay, what did the other consultant pay for her website? What did so what they already kind of have a witness on what the market is like, and they can kind of do that research for themselves too. But
yeah, no, I think you're
man, that's awesome. Yeah, dude. Like I said, I really look up to you, and I wanted to get to know you a little bit, and I learned a lot just in this conversation, whether it's on a personal level, but also just a tactical business sense too. Like I feel a lot more educated, and it's definitely the highlight of my day when I can get off the laptop for a little bit and have some human connection. So but yeah, man, tell me, where can people find you? Are there any resources where they want them to reach out to you, whether it's LinkedIn or your website or anything like that?
Yeah, well, thank you, Andy. Yeah, this has been awesome, man. Super appreciate you reaching out. I feel like you are a class act, so super stellar, dude. Yeah, you can find me on LinkedIn. That's where I hang out normally. Used to be on X or Twitter, but not out there as much anymore. So yeah, like this, let's fun hanging out.